We are taught to wait for a reason to feel good. We look for the promotion, the partner, or the breakthrough before we allow ourselves the luxury of genuine excitement. But have you ever noticed a strange electric spark in your chest before anything has actually changed? It is a sudden, unprompted surge of energy that feels like it belongs to a future that hasn't arrived yet. Most of us dismiss this feeling as a temporary distraction or a nervous fluke. We wait for the world to move first. Yet there is a recurring pattern in the lives of those who seem to manifest effortlessly. They understand a hidden mechanical truth about the way reality functions. This feeling is not a reaction to your success. It is the very signal that makes the success possible. We often live our lives in a state of quiet negotiation with the future. We tell ourselves that once the bank account hits a certain number, or once the right person finally walks through the door, we will finally have permission to feel alive. But have you ever noticed those rare days when you woke up feeling invincible for no reason at all? On those mornings, the coffee tasted better, the traffic seemed to part for you, and opportunities appeared out of thin air before you even looked for them. Then, just as mysteriously, the flow vanishes. We fall back into the grind, wondering why the magic felt so temporary. It is easy to assume these peaks are just random bursts of dopamine. However, when you look closer, a specific pattern begins to emerge. You may have been overlooking a subtle mechanical dialogue between your internal state and the world around you. This raises an essential question. Why does the universe seem to respond to our joy rather than providing the reason for it? Stay with me, because the mechanism behind this shift is far simpler than most people imagine. We usually label these moments as streaks of good luck or being on a roll. You might recall a time when you followed a tiny, inexplicable whim, perhaps taking a different route home or calling a friend out of the blue, and it led to a chain reaction of perfect timing. In those hours, every green light seemed to wait for you. Every conversation felt sparked with meaning. But contrast that with the days where you are determined to make things happen through sheer force of will. Suddenly, the world feels heavy. Emails go unanswered. Technology glitches. Even the simplest tasks meet a strange, invisible wall of resistance. This is the strange consistency many people notice, yet we often overlook the common denominator. We assume these cycles of flow and friction are external weather patterns that we simply have to endure. We call it bad timing or a tough week, but the repetition suggests something deeper is at play. When you look closely, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. The moments of effortless alignment didn't start with an external change. They started with a specific internal frequency that appeared before the first miracle occurred. We have been conditioned to view excitement as a reward for an achievement. We see it as the finish line. But this reveals something important about how reality actually works. Excitement is not a destination. It is a frequency. Specifically, it is the physical translation of your alignment with your true self. When you feel that sudden surge of interest or that inexplicable pull toward a specific task, you aren't just feeling happy, you are receiving a signal. This is where the experience begins to make sense. Imagine your life as a vast map of possible directions. In this system, excitement acts as a highly sophisticated navigational compass. It identifies which path leads to the most effortless version of your life. We often overlook this because it feels too simple or perhaps too joyful to be practical. We assume that important results must require struggle and complex planning. Yet the mechanism is far more streamlined than we expect. The feeling of excitement appears first because it is the energetic signature of the reality you are about to enter. It is the precursor, the green light that tells you the path is open. This is the hidden rule behind the experience. Your reality is not a single solid timeline, but a series of static frames. Think of it like a film reel. The frames only appear to move because of the light passing through them at a specific frequency. In this system, your excitement is the projector's lamp. When you follow your excitement, you are essentially tuning your frequency to a version of reality where the next logical frame contains the result you desire. It is very much like a radio. You cannot hear the music on 98.1 if you are still tuned to 104.5. This explains why the flow disappears the moment we ignore the signal. When we choose a path out of fear or obligation, we effectively turn the dial to a different station. We are still the same person, but we are now viewing a completely different set of frames where things feel heavy, blocked, or stagnant. This mechanism has been operating in your life since the day you were born, quietly guiding every ordinary decision you've ever made. Suddenly, the pattern makes sense. The excitement came before the result, because the excitement was the act of tuning into the reality where that result already exists. You weren't waiting for the world to change. You were waiting for yourself to select the right channel. If the mechanism is so simple, why is it so difficult to follow? This is where many of us lose the signal. The moment excitement appears, a secondary system often kicks in, the voice of social conditioning. We have been trained to believe that if something feels effortless and joyful, it must be irresponsible or unrealistic. We confuse caution with intelligence and interpret our own fear as logical wisdom. This is the moment the inner voice begins to argue, insisting that we must focus on the hard truths instead of the fleeting sparks. We tell ourselves we are being practical, but in reality, we are simply choosing a vibration of lack over a vibration of abundance. How many times has your own logic silenced a signal that felt exactly right? When we choose safety over alignment, the friction we previously discussed begins to return. The world feels heavy again, not because the universe is punishing us, but because we have manually turned the dial away from the flow. I'm curious if you've ever felt this signal and talked yourself out of it. If you've experienced these moments of internal conflict, share your story in the comments. To begin shifting your reality, you don't need a grand transformation. You only need to change how you respond to the next 5 minutes. This is where the navigation begins. The formula is a simple 3-part cycle. First, look at the options available to you right now and choose the one that contains even a tiny bit more excitement than the others. Second, act on that excitement to the absolute best of your ability, taking it as far as you can until you can take it no further. Finally, and most importantly, release all attachment to what the outcome should look like. This process works because it keeps your frequency tuned to the version of reality where the next breakthrough lives. How different would a day feel if you followed the signal instead of the fear? You are not trying to force a result. You are simply allowing your internal compass to point the way. This formula works best when followed with a sense of light curiosity rather than the pressure to succeed. It is an experiment in trust. If this perspective resonates with you, consider subscribing for more explorations into the mechanics of your reality. The shift rarely starts with something dramatic. It usually appears as a quiet, persistent curiosity in the middle of a normal afternoon. Imagine you are working on a routine task when you suddenly feel a small, inexplicable urge to research a topic that has nothing to do with your job. Your logic tells you it is a waste of time, but instead of silencing the signal, you spend 10 minutes following that thread. That small action leads you to a specific article, which mentions a person you haven't thought about in years. On a whim, you send them a brief message. By the next morning, that person responds with an opportunity that perfectly solves a problem you've been struggling with for months. This is often how the shift begins. We frequently dismiss these sequences as mere coincidence, but they are the mechanical result of staying on the frequency of your excitement. Have you ever followed a small curiosity that led somewhere entirely unexpected? These moments are not random glitches in your day. They are the breadcrumbs of a different reality. When you act on the smallest spark, you are effectively telling the universe you are ready to change channels. This changes the way we understand the entire human experience. If excitement is truly a directional signal, it implies that the life you seek is not something you have to build from scratch. Instead, it suggests something remarkable about the nature of reality, that every version of your life already exists as a potential frequency, waiting for you to tune in. We often think of our future as a blank void that we must fill with effort, but suddenly the pattern reveals a deeper meaning. You are not a traveler walking a single lonely road. You are a navigator moving through an infinite field of possibilities. Could these small sparks of interest be the literal pull of a version of yourself that is already living the reality you desire? This perspective reframes your joy from a simple emotion into a profound biological interface with the multiverse. It suggests that you are never truly lost, provided you are willing to trust the signal over the map. You may already be standing at the threshold of this realization in your own life, noticing that the more you honor the spark, the more the world seems to reorganize itself around your presence. Reality is not a solid wall. It is a mirror reflecting the frequency you choose to embody. Perhaps the signal has been there all along, hidden in the quiet corners of your daily routine.
We often spend our lives waiting for a grand transformation, yet the pattern suggests that the shift begins simply by noticing the sparks that already exist. How often have these subtle impulses appeared in your life, only to be hushed by the noise of expectation? As you move through the next few hours, you may begin to notice a new clarity in your own decisions, as if the volume on your internal compass has finally been turned up. The journey of alignment doesn't require a map of the future. It only requires the courage to honor the very next excitement that finds you. If you are curious about the deeper mechanics behind how these internal signals actually reshape the world around you, the exploration appearing on your screen dives even further into that mystery. It is the next chapter in understanding how your consciousness and reality truly interact.